Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Webinar Wednesday series. My name is Sharon, and I'm with SIPA, your Colorado Government Authority, helping you get more information and services online and offering Colorado government's grant funding. Joining us today is the team from Boston Consulting Group, who will be discussing how to build digital government services that people actually want to use. We definitely love human-centered design. Before we get started, please go ahead and turn on captioning if you need or desire, and note that during this webinar you are muted. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function, and if you have any comments or information you'd like to share, please use that chat function. We'll unmute folks at the end for any remaining questions that you would like to ask. We have two poll questions during the webinar and a post-webinar survey, and we hope you will provide your feedback. Please join me in welcoming Heidi and the rest of her team. Also on the call is SIPA's Sales and Marketing Director, Beth Justice, and Customer Success Director, Dwayne Tucker, if you have any questions for us. Thank you again for joining us all today. And with that, I will turn it over to our guests.
Great. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Heidi Kim, and I'm with the Boston Consulting Group. We will introduce ourselves in a second, but before we do that, wanted to turn our attention to why it is that you've shown up today. We led with a little bit of a cheeky title in terms of building digital services people actually want to use, but I do think this is a pain point that over and over again comes up with clients that we serve as something that they're desiring to do, where the path to getting there may be a little bit more difficult than one may imagine. And so today what we wanted to do was share some examples and practical tips on how to deliver those services, understanding that the reason why you've all shown up is because you are well into this journey and figuring out ways to do this even better. There's three chapters we're going to go through today. The first is going to be talking about really how we think about transforming a single service. As governments and other institutions, we are kind of service providers, and figuring out how to deliver that end to end requires thinking about the customer, thinking about the employees who are on the front lines, thinking about the technology. And so we'll talk through kind of what that looks like in terms of taking that holistic approach. The second chapter is going to be around how you then build something like a digital front door to unify service delivery. Oftentimes, people are not coming to us to access a single service, but they're actually coming to us as humans who have real problems or trying to access a myriad of services to meet their human needs. And there are many challenges to that you may have seen either as residents or constituents trying to access these services or as the service providers. So we're going to walk through a bit of a perspective on how you can then improve not just a singular service, but a collection of services. And then finally, it being 2026, we'd be remiss if we did not talk about AI. What we'll talk about in chapter 1 and 2 will also apply to any AI efforts that are in progress. But we also want to explicitly talk about how we enable teams to both use AI to accelerate how they do their work, but also how we can then use AI to deliver better and different services than we could before. So that is the overview of what we will cover today. Before we get into a ton of content, though, did want to introduce ourselves. So my name is Heidi Kim again. I'm a managing director and partner with BCG, and specifically a group within BCG called BCGX, which is our build and design unit. I help lead our digital and tech work across all of our state and local clients, and also serve on the leadership team for the Center for Digital Government, which is a global group we have here to share best practices on how we are serving clients worldwide, and also a center where we do research on things like citizen and resident satisfaction with government services, some of that data which I'll share today. I focus a lot on kind of how you take ideas to delivery. Come from a experience of doing a ton of human-centered design and product management, and was prior to BCG working in a number of different tech companies and startups in a product capacity. And really, the reason why I'm here is that I'm really passionate about improving access to government services. I think it is our responsibility to be better stewards of tax dollars. I think it is our responsibility to better deliver services. And so playing a small role in making that possible and supporting folks who really are on the front lines trying to deliver these services is something that gets me up every morning. With that, I'll turn it over to Tiffany, who is also a core part of our team.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tiffany Chen. I'm a principal at BCGX. An enterprise architect and software engineer by trade. I've spent most of my career bringing emergent technologies to public sector organizations. I have expertise in digital identity, AI, and decentralized ledger technologies, and I work with our Center for Digital Government to think of innovative, pragmatic solutions that we can bring to our state and local clients. I am also very passionate about government. I actually have a background in public policy before I came into technology, and this is just a great intersection, and I love being part of this work.
Awesome. With that, we will get started. And please do drop in some questions in the chat. We can address some of those as we go through, and we will leave some time at the end for Q&A. So starting in chapter one of the things that we wanted to start to cover is what are the challenges to be solved. We see, if we go to the next slide, that there is a set of challenges that are consistent when we talk to our clients. There's a set of things which is around the customer experience, rising expectations from constituents that we're trying to serve, still lack of digital access to some services, right, that are still done on paper, and neglected customer needs where we know that there is a need out there, but just haven't had the capacity to be able to address those. There are operational challenges. Sometimes we're asking our frontline employees, especially, to do things that make their employee experience actually quite difficult, right? Working in systems that can be a little bit clunky or break down all the time, for example. There are issues with training and recruitment. I'm sure many of you have experienced this, right? There is an aging workforce, and folks that we're bringing on board are hard to retain. Or even if they are happy with their jobs, it just takes some time for them to get onboarded to be fully effective in their roles. There are increased support inquiries in this context, right? We often work with folks who are getting more calls than they have capacity to answer. And the reason why we chose this particular icon is like, yes, there are still phone calls, despite the fact that there could be digital channels that are accessible to do customer service. And then lastly, there are a number of reasons why these operational challenges and experience challenges still exist due to the technologies that are being used. Legacy systems that just haven't been updated into the modern age, increased cybersecurity risks that are hard to keep on top of. And then weak data and management, which makes it hard to be able to leverage modern technology, even if there was intent to do so. For example, this is becoming a very hot topic in the age of AI because that foundation is a critical lever to be able to deliver on some of those solutions. So there are many reasons why what we're trying to describe today in terms of delivering better government services digitally is hard to do. But let me pause here. We're going to have a poll go up. We'd love to hear what challenges of this list resonate most with you.
So, constituent expectations, lack of digital services, neglected customer needs, poor employee experience, training and recruitment, increased support inquiries, legacy systems, cybersecurity risks, and weak data and management. That's quite the list. All right, I will end it, and here are our results.
Awesome.
Legacy systems by far and away the winner.
Yeah, this is a great list. So yes, legacy systems can certainly be a blocker to some of these things. And particularly as we get into Tiffany's section, we'll talk about how we can overcome some of those barriers, even in the short term, to drive value. Poor employee experience is also an important one. We'll talk a bit about how we address that as we go through today. This is very helpful. All right, great. So we're logging that as we go through. To share some kind of additional data with you in terms of the urgency of these problems, one of the things that the Center for Digital Government at BCG runs is a biannual survey where and it's the longest kind of longitudinal study of this kind, where we survey folks across the globe in terms of their experience working with government services, and that is at the federal level, state level, and the local level. A couple of things have been key trends over the last kind of number of years that we've done this, which is one, expectations are continuing to rise. In the last survey that we did, which is in 2024, and is actually currently in the process of being refreshed, 78% of folks that we polled said that government should match the private sector in terms of the level of service. If you're trying to compare governments to folks like Apple and Google and Uber and others who are really on the leading edge. That is quite a tall order, given governments are often asked to do many, many other things than just maintain technology. And the other thing that we've seen is that satisfaction, despite investment that's been happening, has stagnated, right? There is increased access to digital services and usage of those services, which is the green line on the right-hand side. But what you see is between kind of 28 and present, the satisfaction with those things have stagnated. And if anything, we expect some of that to go down, especially with the speed of technology today. Thankfully, do want to note that folks in Colorado tend to be much happier than other states with their digital services. So there is a strong foundation to build off of, but do want to highlight that gap. And so the question is, certainly governments will not become the next Google or OpenAI or these companies, but how can we leverage what is accessible to us to deliver on better services? Part of this is about kind of how we think about doing this work. So one of the other trends that we've seen, and hopefully I don't believe this would be a surprise to you, is that many agencies have experienced failures even despite having invested a ton into IT projects, right? What you can see here is that most folks fall under the grouping of woe, which is there is not as much value creation as was hoped for, despite investing oftentimes tens, hundreds of millions of dollars. And very few actually see themselves having met that value or exceeding. And so, kind of going back to the earlier point around being responsible stewards of the dollars, how do we think about not being in that kind of red category, but being closer to that green category and delivering value? And the reason that matters, go to the next slide, is that there can be great impact if we do this correctly, right? Improve quality of services while having reduced cost, being able to deliver on better experiences and improving the trust that we're building with the constituents that we're serving, having better supported policy, or even being able to support new services. Being able to be collaborative and agile in the way that we work, and being able to drive data-driven decisions. Having efficiencies in the way that we're delivering services, and not just efficiency, but consistency in terms of how we're serving everyone we're meant to serve. And in some cases, there can be also increased revenue potential for agencies who are trying to recoup cost through some of these services as well. So the reason for doing this is big, and we do believe that this is possible. We've seen this work in a number of places across the globe. Go to the next page. And just to call out a couple of examples, if we think about the age of COVID, that was a unique time in the sense that folks were forced to innovate in much faster speed because of the urgency of the situation. And many states, agencies, et cetera, were able to launch new services, launch new apps, and did this in weeks, not months or years, which is the typical timeline. Um, we've also seen improvements in journey and experience. For example, increased uptake of digital government services in places where we've invested. In this particular example, we saw a 39% increase just through a focused effort there. In another example, we were able to increase reduction in call abandonment by about 31%. And we've had a number of examples of doing that. And while doing so, improvement in things like staff time wasted through digitization. So there is large opportunity here to improve the experiences. And certainly that can be done by marrying sort of the customer experience as well as the employee experience. If we go to the next page. This is some numbers from one particular transformation that we did with another client, but through digitizing certain services and going through that end-to-end transformation, we were able to increase employee productivity by 2x. We were able to decrease costs by about 25%, and we were able to increase the self-service that was done by constituents by about 38%. And this was made possible by taking this holistic approach. So what do we actually mean when we say holistic approach? So we oftentimes think about the customer experience, which is where the starting point of discussion is, as the tip of this iceberg. This includes building human-centered digital solutions. It includes designing things that are omni-channel, and that could also include physical spaces. It includes things like adding a digital front door by which folks can access services. It includes things like being able to have self-service of certain things. But in order to make all of that possible, there's a lot of work that goes on underneath. One layer of that is around the operations, as well as the kind of employee experience and the people who power those experiences. We spend a lot of time in the work that we do really thinking about process optimization, right? So for every application that is submitted, every service that is provided, there is an operation layer that often sits in the back end. So how do we make that better? How do we think about procurement, which can be an important lever to help enable us to provide certain services at certain levels? And data and analytics, right? How do we have information about the constituents that we're surveying, about the delays in certain steps of the process, and so on? And then, of course, in order to scale that impact in that layer, it requires a lot of concerted effort around change management, around the organization and the governance. There's, of course, then the technology, which is part of the reason why we are all here today. Much of what we're able to do to deliver on that customer experience depends on what vendor partners we have access to and the products that we are able to leverage. It has to do with the data management side and what we have access to there. It depends on having really strong cybersecurity practices. And then lastly, it really kind of depends on having the right architecture at the enterprise level or at the solution level to be able to be nimble, to be enough to deliver on these experiences. So as we think about kind of delivering that great customer experience, what we're actually thinking about is this entire iceberg. And thinking about just only one part of this, whether it's the technology or just the customer experience, may not be enough to be able to deliver on these experiences end to end. So we wanted to bring this to life with a case study. This is some work that we'll reference in both my section and as Tiffany goes through in hers, of some work that we've done with another client. And here we're doing a couple things. We have been optimizing individual services, and we also have been building that digital front door, which we'll talk about in a second. But the starting point of all of this work is really starting with the human. So if we think about the top of the iceberg and who we're trying to serve, much of this is about being out in the field, talking to real customers, understanding how they access these services today, what they're hoping to get out. And as we do that, we're also talking to other stakeholders that are in the mix, whether they're the frontline government employees or others who may be helping make decisions on behalf of the constituents. So, for example, in the work that we're doing, services are not accessed just by the individual, but by their parents or by their caretakers. And so we want to get an understanding of pain points all across. So this requires being out in the field and shadowing folks in their day-to-day life. And that's a key part of how we deliver that good experience. Part of the work, though, then is thinking about not just the problems, but how do you actually translate that to a real experience? If we can go back one of the things that we think is really important is getting to visuals and really kind of prototypes of the solutions as quickly as possible, understanding that the first take at that problem is probably going to be incorrect, right? And we'll talk about this kind of in the last part of the session, but there's so many tools that are available now that make it easy for us to create prototypes, either visual ones or functional ones, and then to be able to take those back out into the field and not just understand that we've identified the problem, but the way that we're starting to articulate the solution is the right one. That's a bit of what is shown here on the right. Of course, if we now skip to the next slide, a significant portion of the work that we're doing here with this client is really thinking about redesigning the processes. If we want to make a more efficient experience for the customer, it also requires that the back office is behaving in a different way. And so part of the work that we've done here is doing a baselining of what the current processes are, and then iterating on that workflow over time to get to something that marries that customer experience with the employee experience. That is a process that continues to iterate. You know, as these services launch, we want to come back to this process as well and ensure that we're solving for the problems that the employees are facing. And that's a critical part of how we deliver on that customer promise. This all is not just a theoretical exercise about getting to the right answer, though, right? One of the big frictions when we think about improving services is that there are humans that need to be involved and humans at scale that need to be involved. There may be a select number of folks who get us to the right kind of set of um, answers. But really, at the end of the day, we need everyone to be bought in to work in a fundamentally different way. And so, one of the ways that we've done this in this particular context is we've set up kind of interdepartmental groups that have been meeting since the beginning of this effort. They are part of the customer research that we're doing. They help sketch ideas before we get to those visual prototypes. You can see on the far right here, there's some sketches of things that the team there actually came up with themselves. And so we create this sort of interactive way of working that enables us to not only get ideas from folks who have been thinking about this, but also enables us to do change management from day one because people feel like they're part of the solution. Of course, there's additional work to be done to go from this group to a broader set of folks, but that spirit of co-creation, that spirit of actually listening to the employees as a key stakeholders has been a critical foundation to success when we've done this work in the past. And then lastly, want to talk about the technology. So through the kind of customer research, the early designs, the process mapping, the change management and engagement of a broad set of employees, that produce a clear blueprint of the technology requirements and some of the platform needs that were required. The work here is not just about the design, it's actually about the implementation as well. But we were able to come up with certain features that were AI driven, some of those kind of bigger, bolder things. That we're going to drive impact for the customer. But also, we have spent a ton of time thinking about the things that seem um, less kind of interesting from the surface, right? Really focusing on the data governance and processes that are required to enable a foundation that would deliver on multiple experiences, delivering on a modern, scalable platform that we did use AI code generation for, but a scalable platform that would enable us to not just deliver on these individual services, but be able to extend into new services as they came on board. So a holistic approach of really thinking about the customer, the employee experience, and operations, as well as the technology, is how we deliver better digital services one by one. Let me pause here and see if any questions.
We do have one in the Q&A, which I think is also in the chat from Doug. Very interested in the Weak Data and Management Tech Challenge with regard to legacy data in government that is tabular, e.g. SQL columns and rows. Leadership seems to have an expectation that generative AI can conduct magical workarounds to resolve longstanding data architecture and management, tech debt. This seems to be co-joined with the legacy systems challenge. Is there a BCG pragmatism to offer in this challenge?
Stephanie, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I think there's a lot of talk right now about AI being a magic bullet, and you're absolutely right. It's not going to solve all of those problems. I think overlooking the data governance and process and people part of the equation is something that we see often. And I think having those policies in place to provide guardrails for data standards, data quality, data security is a really important starting point. And then the rest, I think, is an iterative process. And we'll talk more about this in the next section about building up these capabilities phase by phase, level by level, to reduce the risk of, providing a big bang approach, but also still delivering on the capabilities that you'll need in the end. Heidi,
And
anything
then,
to add?
oh, sorry, Tiffany.
Nope, I think that's great.
Stacy also had a question. What are examples of good prototype tools? And do some CRM, for example, vendors offer them with an implementation?
Yeah. So the prototype tools that are available, even if the extent of some CRM tools would be separate products, most likely. We'll talk about some of this in the last chapter of this, but some of the ones that we like to use, for example, are tools like Figma Made, which help us with the visual prototyping. We also have been using Claude Coach, which I know everyone is talking about these days, to develop kind of more functional prototypes now that the cost of development is quite low. We also have been using, Tiffany and I've used a product called Bubble.io for many years, which is a prototyping tool that enables you to build an application layer very quickly. So there is a broad range. If there's specific questions, Stacey, in terms of your context, we're happy to brainstorm with you as well. I think one of the things that we know it has been a challenge in many cases is just the set of tools that you have access to and what your agencies or departments have procured. And we have found good workarounds in many cases or ways to leverage tools, even if they might not be the obvious ones that you think about. Great. With that, we'll move into chapter 2.
Great. So in chapter 1, we talked about why this end-to-end transformation matters, and now we'll shift more from why to how. And the reality is that governments don't deliver just one service, they deliver hundreds of services. But if we modernize them without actually connecting them, we're just digitizing some of the existing fragmentation that may exist. So true transformation really requires unifying service delivery, and that's where the concept of a digital front door comes in. A digital front door is not just a website refresh or a new online form. It's a holistic approach to improving both the constituent experience and the employee experience at the same time. So for constituents, that might mean having one place to start, a secure way to log in, applications that are pre-filled and streamlined, clear status updates, and personalized recommendations. And for employees, it could mean having a complete view of the person that they're serving, standardized workflows, integrated case management, and data to support better decisions. So digital front door is not just about digitizing isolated transactions, it's about designing connected journeys. And to do that requires some foundational capabilities that need to be able to work together. So there are a handful of core capabilities that make the digital front door possible. First, a set around identity and access. This includes secure digital identity, profile or household management. And without these trusted identities, personalization and cross-program coordination become really challenging. The second, around unified service delivery. So this would include providing a single entry point, a shared application hub, eligibility tools, and case management workflows to really simplify discovery and application for constituents while providing the tools on the back office to support it. Third, multi-channel support. So meeting constituents where they are with personalized engagement and notifications in their preferred channels. And then lastly, operational visibility so that employees can see what's happening across programs and serve constituents holistically, not just within their own department. So we'll pause here for a second for a poll. Wanted to understand which of these components has been really top of mind for your employees and constituents.
And we've got secure digital identity and verification, profile and household management, single entry point, assisted eligibility screening, unified service and application hub, case and workflow management, personalized engagement, proactive and omni-channel notifications, 360-degree resident and program view, and data-driven insights. Seems like it would be tough to choose just one. All right. And here are your results.
Great. So we're seeing a lot of interest in the back office, case and workflow management, and then data and identity, as well as the single entry points. That's great. We'll cover all of these as we move through this section, but also happy to answer more questions about it in our Q&A. So the good news is you don't have to build all of those capabilities at once. There's usually 3 progressive levels that organizations will move through. The first is foundational. So at this stage, the focus is really on just improving discovery and digitizing a high impact service. So you might redesign a form, simplify document uploads, improve mobile usability, while selecting tools and evaluating and testing what you'll need to really modernize your backend systems. They may not be fully integrated yet, that's okay. The goal is really just to prove out visible impact for constituents. In level 2, the systems start to connect and identity starts to play a larger role. For constituents, they might be able to log in securely, see their information in one place, track applications, and we'll see employees starting to work in shared workflows instead of siloed systems, leveraging these shared capabilities that you had started building in the previous level. And then finally, in level 3 is where transformation becomes truly integrated, scaling coordinated services across agencies to create these program journeys, proactive alerts, personalized recommendations. And along the way in this journey, the breadth of services will increase, quality of experience increases, and digital maturity increases. So that's all really nice in theory, but let me share a bit about how this actually played out in practice. We partnered with an organization that had very strong programs and high engagement, but they had an issue with fragmentations. Constituents often had to navigate across multiple systems, re-enter information, wait without visibility. We heard from constituents who would submit an application, but then call to follow up 2 or 3 times just to confirm it was received. We also had employees who had to manually reconcile data, switch between systems, manage inconsistent workflows. We shadowed staff who were printing applications, scanning them, manually re-entering them into another system, emailing them to someone else for approval. Really highly capable people spending hours trying to reconcile a form. So starting in level 1, we started by creating a foundation for a human-centered experience. First, testing out capabilities in profile management, delivery, and support. At this stage, we were really just testing and creating proof of concepts on the technology side, while also delivering a redesigned application process for the Department of Education for a single high-volume application. We updated it from a very long, basically a PDF form into a guided user experience that was mobile first design, had clear document requirements and save and resume functionality. Behind the scenes, we implemented a low-code forms engine to introduce rapid iteration while also continuing to test and evaluate technology for the next level. So within weeks, we had over 1,000 applications submitted through this new experience, and adoption of the new features was really strong. Over 90% of applicants use Save or Finish Later, and we had about an 80% 4 or 5 out of 5 citizen satisfaction score. On the operational side, we saw that calls from first-time applicants asking basic "how do I apply" questions dropped by about 11%, and the staff reported higher percentage of complete applications and fewer follow-ups. So building on this experience, we're now leveraging the foundational testing and the proof of concepts we did in level 1 to start connecting core systems, standing up identity management, and standardizing intake through a unified central hub. Over 12 months, we definitely faced some challenges. We had an overburdened legacy system, no common languages or statuses to track applications, very difficult policy questions to answer about how to manage profile and household information securely and privately. We tackled a lot of this both at a process level as well as at a technology level. From the process level, making sure we had proper governance and guardrails in place and clear defining principles for how we wanted to attack some of these challenges. And from a technology perspective, doing it step by step, trying not to replace the entire overburdened legacy system in one go, but breaking it up into pieces and saying, here are the different capabilities that this system is trying to support and replacing them one by one. Once we connected the new identity and the new core systems, we were able to unlock new features in the experience, like quick apply with pre-filled data, profile and household management, application tracking, and personalized suggestions. And the feedback changed almost immediately. During the pilot, one constituent told us, "I'm seeing way more information than I ever had in the past. This is amazing." And for the first time, constituents could log in and see in one place their applications, their household, what they were eligible for. On the employee side, staff no longer had to piece together information across systems. They had a unified view of the person that they were serving. And most importantly, we were able to do it without a big, risky overhaul. We built the capabilities deliberately, layer by layer, over 12 months. And with each step, the experience became more cohesive and the confidence in the platform grew. In the final level, we continue to extend these platform capabilities that we worked out in level 2, and then connected the rest of the data, systems, and workflows in order to provide a unified service delivery across agencies. This shared data provided insights needed to power the personalized experience for constituents and better operational decision-making for the back office. One of the big initiatives was a shared service catalog and centralized data model for all programs and services. So previously, departments managed all their program information independently, but after standardization, we had one source of truth, shared eligibility logic, coordinated delivery, and cross-program recommendations. What this meant for program teams is that before we connected all of the systems and standardized this catalog, staff usually worked service by service. So if a constituent came in for housing support, that's what they focused on. If they later applied for nutrition, it was treated like a completely new interaction. So staff had to toggle between systems, reconfirm information, reconstruct context, and they were spending a lot of time piecing together records instead of focusing on the person in front of them. We spent a lot of time working with our interdepartmental working group, which had representatives across all of the departments in the government, to define a standardized data model, create a set of standardized statuses, and then also try to align their workflows so that 80% of them were standardized, with maybe 20% having to deal with more custom flows. And with that, we were able to create this shared service catalog. So now when a constituent engages, the program team sees a unified view of what services they've received, what applications may be in progress, and what they may be eligible for next. So one of our team members actually told us that she felt like she could finally understand the full picture. So imagine someone applies for higher education. Under the old model, the information that was part of that intake would live as part of the education program, and no one else would be able to see it. But once we centralized the service catalog, provided clear governance and security around the data and how it would be shared across departments, a program team member could review that application and notice maybe there's indicators of housing instability or food insecurity. So now instead of just processing the education award, the program team can provide proactive intervention, identifying other services and connecting the household to additional benefits. So in doing that, we moved from managing isolated transactions to supporting coordinated journeys across departments to serve constituents and households. There are a lot of capabilities that we unlocked in level 3, some of them listed here below. I think one of the biggest ones that we saw was the assisted eligibility screening, which really helped both constituents as well as back office understand what people might be eligible for. And then also this 360 view of the resident, being able to serve people holistically across their lifetime. Now, one of the most important lessons we've learned is that the technology alone is not enough. You can have the right platform, the right architecture, the right tools, but if you don't sequence it correctly and govern it effectively and bring people along, the impact just won't stick. So we found that there are 3 things that really made the difference. First, around discipline sequencing. Not every service should move at once. We focused on high volume services where impact is visible, high friction journeys where the pain is real, and clear readiness criteria. So departments that are prepared to adopt. This kind of discipline helps you build momentum and then not overload what we were trying to do. We're focused on small visible wins to build trust to build adoption, and then adoption that can lead to scale. The second was cross-department governance. So this work could not sit inside one team. We established a number of different working groups that brought together department stakeholders, technology leads, data governance leaders, and this created shared ownership with transparent decision making, visible trade-offs, aligned priorities, and really created trust across the departments that they were being heard and that the decisions we were made in unifying service delivery was going to positively impact all of the departments. And the last is change enablement. Departments should not feel like recipients of a new system. They should feel like design partners. We wanted to shift the narrative from this is a new system being imposed on us to this is something we built together. And in our experience, departments were really energized to be part of the design process. They were excited to share their pain points. They wanted to test early versions. They wanted to give feedback. And those early participants became the strongest champions when we onboarded these new departments. So I will close this chapter with just 3 quick takeaways. A digital front door is not just a portal. It's really an integrating operating model connecting identity, intake, workflows, data, and communications so that constituents can experience government as one coordinated system and not a collection of departments. And secondly, governments offer a lot of services and transformation requires connecting them. We want to design journeys that can cross programs, reduce duplication, and make that service delivery feel seamless for constituents as well as for the back office. And lastly, we want to build credibility with visible wins, sequence intentionally, and design with the end state in mind. And when that's executed well, you don't just get better technology, you get truly unifying service delivery to better serve constituents. I'm going to pause there, see if there's any questions in the chat.
There is
There's
indeed.
there's a question from Doug around kind of how we think about ROI and making the investment case. I'm happy to take that one, Doug. So, definitely top of mind for all of our clients. I know most folks are in very constrained budget situations. And one of the things I think is unique a little bit about how BCG does this work is that and for those of you who know us from previous worlds, BCG has traditionally been known as a strategic consulting shop that does a lot of business case analysis and so on. And really, over the last kind of decade or two, we have built out these digital capabilities. The reason why I mention that is that we are highly analytical in the way that we think about the broader business case for any of the technology projects that we do. This comes out in a couple of ways. One is as we think about the costing, we really think about the holistic cost, not just what is the cost of building the technology, but what is the cost of doing this holistic change that Tiffany just talked about. Doing the change management for the employees who actually have to use these digital tools, for example, thinking about the ongoing maintenance costs of these tools, and how do we think about kind of making certain technology decisions today based on what we think the ongoing costs, both on the kind of core technology side as well as the ongoing maintenance would be. So there's kind of, I would say, robust analysis that we do on the cost side of the equation. But we're also equally robust in terms of really understanding what is the return that we think we can get. And the way that we drive to that return really depends on exactly what it is we're doing. But oftentimes, the objective function is really to increase efficiency. To be able to size the impact of the efficiency really requires understanding the process end to end, where we think that lift is going to come, how improvements in a certain step of the process is going to have downstream impacts. And so we are quite kind of analytical in terms of ensuring that we fully understand where those returns are going to come from in order to get that broader picture. Hopefully that answers your question, Doug, but if there's any follow-ups, do let us know.
There's no other questions, then I will hand it back over to Heidi.
Awesome. Great. So I'm going to spend about 5 minutes on the AI chapter. We could do a whole other session on AI, but it felt important to at least address it because this is currently something that I know folks are thinking about, but also AI does play a role in everything that we've described before. There are many ways to talk about AI, but I just want to address kind of both halves of the pie, if you will. One is AI has changed the way that we design services. It means that we could do things like research in a more accelerated way. It means that we can take things that were administrative tasks that were sort of like repetitive things and make that kind of more efficient so that we're not kind of delaying projects and processes. It means there's ability to do more rapid prototyping than before, to identify trends, to be able to simulate impact before we do implementation, for example. And so fundamentally, the way that we now do the work that we just described is changed because of AI. But it also then impacts what we actually deliver. There's opportunity to reshape or perhaps totally reinvent the services themselves, making them much more relevant, making them much more personalized, being more proactive, and being more integrated. Some of these things could include things like proactively recommending programs and services rather than waiting for people to come to us. It means reducing the burden for people to navigate certain systems, right? Why is it that we need to expose our organizational complexities to folks who are trying to access our services? There's the opportunity to streamline the access to root referrals in a more efficient way, and so on. There's opportunity to do more personalized communication, whether they're reminders or nudges or personalized communication messages themselves to be able to increase uptake and compliance. And then there's also ways for us to be able to increase access to programs by doing things like improving multilingual support, whether that's at the application level or in a kind of more extreme 24/7 customer service using multilingual support. So I think it's an exciting time for a number of reasons, especially I think going back to the point around budget constraints. There's more efficient ways to be able to do this work while also then delivering better services. Just to give you a little bit of an example of what that looks like, this is a workflow from one of the projects that Tiffany and I have worked on. What we've been able to do using AI is really shorten the path from having an idea and identifying those frictions to delivering that impact. We're using AI to help accelerate the research using things like, in this case, we use Zoom Companion to be able to synthesize notes from interviews, being able to use ChatGPT to then get further insights from the interviews that we did, even generate questions for the next set of interviews, and so on. We also then accelerated the design process, right? There was a world when we would have to manually create prototypes to be able to test ideas. Now we get to very high fidelity designs very quickly using things like Figma Make. We've been using V0 by Vercel quite a bit to be able to come up with multiple designs. And some of this is about speed, but some of it, this is also about breadth, right? In some cases, we're able to come up with many different design directions and test those things. Those used to be things that were quite costly to do, and now we can do that relatively quickly and at low cost. We've also used AI to help kind of structure data more efficiently. In this case, we use Llama by Meta to be able to classify, tag, and structure data at scale and reduce some of the manual effort that goes into building this foundation. And then finally, we've been using AI tools in the QA and development processes as well, things like GitHub Copilot and Claude, in order to help speed up the speed of development and get the engineers really focused on the things that require their human attention. The value that we can deliver by that is not just speed, but also AI can also help us reshape some of those services. One of the things that we've been doing here at BCG is building out an offering that we call Government Processing Accelerator to be able to help our clients be able to leverage AI on key kind of components of their processes that we have found to be common across many government clients. One of those things is document processing. In this particular example, we used AI to be able to do real life document data extraction and validation so that rather than having to wait for a human to review that and having a back and forth with the applicant, we're able to extract the data right away and flag any issues, reducing not just the back office time, but also the experience of the applicant so that we could catch any issues before there was any wait. In the second example, we worked with the Federal Justice Department to help process criminal injury claims. Prior to this, there was a long backlog of these claims. And in fact, there was more funding available than was able to be allocated because the process was so arduous. Through using AI, we were able to reduce the processing effort efficiency by about 10%. And on the customer experience side, impacted the cycle time by reducing that by about 80 days, which had huge impact on the folks who are waiting on these funds. And then on the right-hand side, we've also used AI to do more kind of end-to-end reshaping of processes. In this particular case, we worked with a federal agency um, in Europe to help them accelerate sort of the compliance testing for wind turbine permit applications. And what we were able to do here is allow for consistent application of the law and policies in the several steps of approvals, and to be able to faster adapt as those policies change. There are also other things in here in terms of increasing the speed to communicate with various stakeholders throughout the process, but also ensure that consistency of service, which is now possible using AI. This matters, and I think we started to allude to this, but this matters not only because it impacts the customer experience, but it also does impact the experience of those who are delivering on those services, right? Those employees who are part of our teams, by improving their productivity and efficiency and giving them analytical tools to be able to optimize their human decision making and really where their effort matters. There's also impact in terms of satisfaction and retention, right? Reducing the administrative burden. We oftentimes talk about how can be a lot of toil in people's jobs, and we want to bring back the joy. And taking some of those kind of repetitive administrative tasks, which is not the reason why they took their jobs initially, can help them focus on the mission which brought them to these roles and increase satisfaction that way. Lastly, there are many, many opportunities in terms of where AI can play a role, but just wanted to cover on the next page a few of the things that we've seen as common themes. I would say there's opportunity for us to think bigger here, but these are some of the things that we've seen as common ones that folks are thinking about. Things like improving application review or license review, enabling the staff to be able to search information better, right? To be able to be on top of policy documents despite being a new employee, and being able to more consistently answer questions for folks or make decisions. Um, Increasing sort of or improving the process of doing documentation for critical information, right? There's a lot of time spent creating documents. What if we could use AI to help accelerate that, particularly given that some of these documents have a lot of similarities? There's an opportunity to improve constituent communication, right? Generating content in different languages, generating content that is more personalized to certain segments of the population. And then lastly, providing multi-channel kind of citizen service support, and doing that potentially in different ways that increases accessibility, including multilingual support. So much opportunity there, and certainly could be another kind of talk in itself, but did want to cover that there is opportunity, especially in this age of AI, for us to do everything that we described in chapter 1 and chapter 2, but in bigger, bolder ways. And with that, I will pause and open up for questions or comments.
Thank you, Heidi. That was awesome. If anyone has a question, raise your hand. I will unmute you, or if you want to just throw it in the Q&A or chat, you're welcome to do that as well. Yeah, there's lots to know. All right, we've got a quiet group. So if you think of something else afterwards, you know where to find us. Please reach out anytime. We are here to help. We also have more information for you on our website. Don't forget our microgrant and GovGrant programs are open right now for applications. So please get those in by March 31st and April 10th, respectively. And you can find all the info that you need on the grants pages for that. We've got some great webinars coming up with Cornflower Labs on March 25th about their new AI chatbot, April 1st with Kaizen Labs, April 15th with MSI SAC, cybersecurity, and Tyler, Colorado, their AI-powered assistants. We've been told we want to hear more about AI, so we're trying to get that for you. Our regional workshops are also back and starting April 15th at the CCCMA conference in Glenwood Springs. We'll be in Huerfano County on April 29th and Delta County on April 30th and the town of Lyman on May 15th. So if you're in any of those areas, we would love to have you come join us. Please go to our regional workshops page and you'll find the registration links there for those. Subscribe to our newsletter to find out all this information and more. Check out our website. And of course, you can always call or email us to find out more because we are here to help. If you want to return to this webinar to watch it again, or you want to share it with a colleague, we'll be getting that processed and uploaded to our YouTube channel, so look out for that. And we want to thank you again for joining us and make it a fantastic day.